Hi, everybody. Hello. This is going to be an amazing IG Live. You are in for a treat. You're going to have Dr. Will, who is one of the most fantastic gastroenterologists. But what is so lovely is that he's just so nice with it. And of course, we are going to discuss a lot about his book, Fiber Fuel, one of my favorite books. And there he is, the man himself. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Dr. Neetu. How are you? It's great to see you. I'm so excited
Just
to
call me
connect with you.
Neetu. Fantastic. You are looking all fresh and ready for our chat.
I'm super excited. It's a beautiful Saturday here in Charleston, South
I
Carolina.
know. Thank you for giving up your time. I know you have a young family, and I am a women's health expert, but I know that there was this particular woman who started you on your journey. So I really, um, I think it's 8 o'clock, and there's no better way than starting off with how you got into, your journey to writing the book, your journey to going plant-based, just generally. We would love to know. I know many of my followers don't know enough. They read your book, but they may not know enough about you.
Well, I mean, I would love to hear your story too. I think we all have a story, and I think that one of the points that I really believe in that is worth saying is that there are many paths that lead us to a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
And we each have our own journey. And for the people who are listening to us, I hope there are some people listening to us who are not currently plant-based, because it's okay to take your time and move in this
Absolutely.
direction. And that's what happened for me, is that there I was, and I was, in my early 30s, and I was just completely exhausted. I had low energy levels, very low self-esteem, a lot of anxiety. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
and despite, to an outsider, you would look at the things that were happening in my life and you would think, oh, this is fantastic. Things are going so well for this guy, but I didn't feel that way. And I was 50 pounds overweight, and clearly something needed to change. And I knew that. And I tried to exercise my way out of it like a
oh,
total type A. I was working out 6 days a week, and it just never really got me. I built muscle, I built endurance. I couldn't lose the weight.
oh.
And so what ultimately changed for me is that I met my wife. And so, but at the time I didn't know she was going to be my wife. We just started to date. But when we would be out on a date, she would order, like, I would be ordering some sort of meat-based dish, and I would look over and she would order a whole bunch of sides because those were the vegetarian options.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, huh, what's going on over there? And I'd never been around anyone like that before. But what I saw was that she had complete control over her weight. She wasn't, struggling with weight issues or with health issues. And oh dear, my cat gets very jealous.
It's fine.
Let
Tell
me,
her or him it's my time now.
yeah, exactly. All right, I'm gonna open the door so he can come in. He gets very
That's
jealous when he,
fine. That's fine. It's all very informal. We want to be the real us, because
yeah,
sometimes with social media, like you were saying about the anxiety, people may not see everything that happens behind,
right.
and it's good to see the real human behind the doctor or the author. I think it makes us just that much more relatable.
Yeah, well, we are real people.
Yeah,
We're real
absolutely.
people. We have feelings. We make mistakes. And so here's my guy.
Hello.
This is Noli.
Oh,
Um,
hello, Noi.
so he's very attached to me. So anyway, I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna kind of explore this a little bit. Like, it wasn't a radical change. It wasn't overnight, but basically it just started with one meal substitution and then do
One
it
meal at
again,
a time.
one
Mhm.
meal at a time, little things here and there. I got rid of, I used to be, so I'm still a huge coffee drinker. I love coffee. And I got rid of the dairy. I got rid of the artificial sweeteners. That was a big difference for me. I dropped the soda, started drinking
Yeah,
water.
that's a big thing in
And
the US, isn't it?
yeah,
Soda.
so, and the amazing thing to me was there I had been for the last, like, probably year and a half, 2 years, fighting in the gym, trying to lose weight, like grinding workouts,
Wow.
not getting anywhere. And then all of a sudden I start making these little dietary changes, and all of a sudden it's just like the weight is melting off my body, my anxiety is lifting, my self-esteem is surging, I start feeling young and alive again. And it was transformative for me, to the point that
Great.
I felt compelled, because I'm a very sort of inquisitive scientific person. And so I felt compelled to ask the question, well, if this is true, like if this is the way that the body works, why was I not taught anything about this at these elite institutions where I trained? And so I went to the medical literature, and I was shocked when I saw that there were not like 5 papers, there were
Thousands.
thousands of papers. And so I started insatiably consuming the medical literature on nutrition at night. And I started bringing the ideas into my medical practice as a gastroenterologist, and seeing amazing transformations in my patients, to the point that, like, people probably look at me and my Instagram persona, and they probably think like, this guy loves Instagram. I do not. I can assure you, I would rather be doing anything in the world than Instagram. But I felt so compelled by what I was seeing
Yeah, you got to
happen.
share what you know.
I had to share it, because I was looking at what was the conversation on gut health on the internet. And I'm like, okay, they're only talking about bone broth and probiotics, and that's nonsense. And so I started the Instagram account really not thinking it would go anywhere. I mean, to be honest with you, and like 2 years after I started, I had 5,000 followers. It's not like I was this sensation. And
Which you should
but
have been, which you are now.
well, what really changed everything, the moment, like there were a couple moments, but really the big moment was that I did a podcast with Simon Hill from Plant Proof,
Yes, I love him.
and I love that guy too. And this podcast ended up going viral, and like literally hundreds of thousands of people downloaded it. And within a matter of weeks, Simon and I had messages pouring in from around the world. And it was that, again, it was so powerful that it made me say, look, like, I can continue to do this Instagram thing. I could continue to appear on podcasts, but it really feels like there's an energy behind this that needs to come out. And that's what motivated me in 2018 to make the decision that I wanted to write a book.
Right.
And so I started that process in 2018, and it took me 2 years. The book came out in May of 2020. And it's crazy, Neetu, that the book has sold 125,000 copies, and it hasn't been a year yet. So, which has been
Amazing.
a wild ride.
And Will, I just want to interrupt you there if you don't mind, because we've had a year of the pandemic. Your book came out during the pandemic, where it's so hard, to make public appearances and go from place to place. Why do you think just the message resonated so much? Why was your book such a standout book? I mean, I have read it, so I know why it is, but I just want to understand, because, writing a book, publishing it in the pandemic is a big deal, actually.
Yeah, I think the thing for me, there's a couple of different aspects to it, right? So when you launch a book, you ask your friends to help push you along, and you can't do it without your friends. It's
Of course we can.
impossible. And so I know all the people, like I remember every single person that was there promoting my book, pushing it. And in my mind, there is this insane level of gratitude that I have,
Yeah.
because in my mind, what I think about is, because the book made the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
And
I know that. Yes.
when that happened, I was like, what if literally one of those people, just one, had not stepped up to help me? Could that have been the difference? And so I'm just eternally grateful to these people who have supported my book. I'm grateful for the people who have read it, that put the message on their social media, and it doesn't matter whether they have 20 followers or thousands of followers. People pay attention to that. And so when people support my book and they spread the message through their social channels, then it puts a book that I truly believe has healing properties.
It has.
It it puts a book that has healing properties in the hands of others, and you are empowering others to find better health.
Absolutely. No, and I think it comes across, not just in your book, but when you talk. And I know Instagram for a lot of us can sometimes feel overwhelming, but I think, it is such a good way. I wouldn't have met you had it not been through Instagram. I wouldn't have met my Insta family without being on social media. People of my age generally don't interact that much on social media. So, I do think that everything that you say or do all seem to come from the same place of conviction and honesty. And I think that's very good because, patients and Instagram followers can pick that up very quickly. They know when somebody is really genuine and actually has the interest of the person who they're, because okay, they may buy your book, they may not buy your book, but that's not your only aim. What you're trying to do is make somebody think,
Right.
about what they're putting in their mouths, how they're living their lives. And,
Right.
you mentioned anxiety there, Will, and I just want to ask you, because, I see thousands, I've been a gynecologist for 35 years, and I see thousands of patients every year, and many of them will tell me that they're so anxious. I have special expertise in polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis and things. And I know that a lot of their anxiety is related to their lifestyle and their diet. How do you think the gut plays a big role in mood? We talk about food and mood, but we know that the gut plays a big role. Can you just sort of explain to me and to people who are listening in now?
Yeah, one of my friends, his name is Emran Meyer, and he's a distinguished professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. And he has been studying the brain gut connection for 25 years. I mean,
Wow.
before the gut was trendy. And you learn from him the power of this connection between our brain and our gut, where they are in constant communication with one another. And there's a number of ways, neetu, that the brain is talking to the gut. It can talk to the gut through the vagus nerve. The brain can release
Yes.
hormones that can alter the gut and the way that the gut functions. For example, the brain can release a hormone in times of stress called CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone.
Yes.
And if you follow that pathway downhill, what you end up finding is that ultimately this leads to alterations and changes in the gut microbiome. And
Right.
this is the reason why stress stress is what actually has negative consequences on the health of our gut. I mean, this is why I'm seeing, many of my ulcerative colitis and Crohn's patients flare during the pandemic, or my patients with irritable bowel
Correct.
syndrome, they're
Correct.
flaring during the pandemic. Um, but also on the flip side, the gut is communicating back to the brain. It's like, 5 different ways to send communication. You could talk to someone, you could send them an email, you could send smoke signals, you could send them a text message. Well, that conceptually is the same
Yeah.
framework that the gut is using to communicate to the brain. Is it's communicating through, signaling molecules like neurotransmitters, short
Right.
chain fatty acids, short chain fatty acids that are derived from fiber that cross the blood-brain barrier, the vagus nerve. So the point being that your brain's best friend is your gut. Your gut's best friend is your brain. I really truly believe that if you want a healthy brain, step one is actually heal your gut.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and they've done recent studies, neetu. There was one that came out in December of 2020, so very recently, where they looked at changes in the gut microbiome as it relates to depression. And they found that people who suffer with major depression had very specific changes to their gut microbiome. And the key is that it's not just the bacteria, it's actually what the bacteria produce.
Use.
That's
Yeah.
the key. And so in this particular case, what they discovered is that this disturbance of the microbiota of the bacteria, this disturbance was leading to a decrease in the production of GABA, GABA, which
Yeah.
is a neurotransmitter that is very intertwined with mood. And these kind of studies, neetu, are coming out every week right now. I mean, we're living in a period of time where I think that the way that you and I were taught to practice medicine it's going to have to be revolutionized because we're going to have to think again, moving away from disease-based pathology or moving away from systems-based learning and
Totally.
starting to understand, I give credit to the chiropractors and the alternative medicine doctors
Yeah.
because they think about the whole body and we have to think about the whole body.
And we think so specific, literally so specific that it sometimes takes us away from the whole patient and you're just treating a symptom or a sign rather than actually the whole patient. And you're so right. Instead of making people who do think about these things our friends, we've sort of alienated them by pushing them away rather than saying, everybody who puts the patient in the center has a role to play. And we just don't want to acknowledge that in the medical field. But I think it's changing slowly, but it's changing.
Yeah, I think it's tough because it's hard to take these huge systems and get them to change very quickly, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of like if you have a boat that's a small boat and you're the one at the steering wheel, it's very easy to change your course and move in a different direction. But
totally.
a big boat that has a crew and all these different things, it's hard to get them to change and do something different, right?
Yeah. But also, one of the reasons for you writing your book, for us talking on Instagram, is to actually bypass these protectors of knowledge that we doctors have been. And, we did know that smoking wasn't really good for us, and we still didn't really come out hard against it. We do know that we need to be eating more fruits and vegetables, but we think, oh, it's too tough to talk to patients about it. So when you actually go to the person and talk about this, I hope that the people who are listening into us will go and challenge their doctor, not in an aggressive way, but just to say, you know what, this is what the science or people who are scientific are saying. Would you help me make these changes or guide me to people? You may not know it as a doctor. I understand not all doctors know about nutrition and about lifestyle, but it shouldn't stop you. I wouldn't dare to treat, people with serious bowel issues. I would rather send them to my colleagues who are gastroenterologists. So just like that, you may have to send your patients to people who actually know what they're talking about, whether it's with nutrition, whether it's with lifestyle. Is somewhere along the way we are so scared that we don't like to confront people about what they eat and skip around all of it and write out pharma based treatment, which is fine. Of course you need it in many places, but I think we don't seem to realize that there is much more to health or to disease than just treating with a tablet. And I see many patients with endometriosis, many patients with chronic pelvic pain. And when I try and encourage them to, try and bring in one plant based meal in a day or increase their fruits or their vegetables, many of them say they get a lot of bloating. Oh, you're asking me to eat all this fiber. What would you say in that sort of situation, Will? What would you say to patients who tell you, oh, I can't do it. It's just too much. I have too much bloating.
Well, there's always nuance to these conversations, right? So many people think because I wrote a book called Fiber Fueled that I would inherently automatically just say, crank up your fiber to every single
Exactly.
person, right? And the reality is that I personalize the conversation to the individual patient based upon what I think is going on. But if we start to peel apart the layers of some of the things that you just described, you mentioned polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. You mentioned endometriosis. You mentioned chronic pelvic pain. And these are conditions that have been all connected to alterations and changes to the gut microbiome, which
Absolutely.
we would call this dysbiosis.
Yeah.
So dysbiosis is indicative of a damaged gut. Guess what happens when a person consumes food that they're not used to eating and they have a damaged gut? They struggle to process it. They struggle to digest it.
Yeah.
Fiber is your gut's best friend when things are good.
Yeah.
And when you're struggling, it can feel like it's the enemy.
Totally.
And it's not. Science is very clear that fiber helps us to reverse dysbiosis. But what we need to have an understanding of the way to introduce the fiber.
Correct.
So that we can accomplish our goal of getting this healing, nutritious food on board without actually hurting ourselves. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, if you have endometriosis and you
Yeah.
have pain when you eat fiber, like tough it out, just suck it
Yeah.
up. Like that's not the way that we handle this. But we have to think about the fact that our gut is conceptually similar to a muscle in the sense that when we ask it
Right.
to do its work, there's a certain amount of work that it's capable of doing. You know, there's a
Correct.
certain amount of fiber that it's capable of digesting in the same way that there's a certain amount of weight that I can lift when I'm
Correct.
exercising. And so if you take the person who has, damage to their gut, dysbiosis, they're not able to consume the same level of fiber that someone
Yeah.
else who does not have dysbiosis is capable of consuming. So they need to reduce their fiber initially to a level that they're capable of doing. And then over the course of time, as you introduce this food, rather than withholding it, as you introduce this food, you actually will grow in terms of the
Correct.
strength of your gut. You will add the functionality, add the capacity, become stronger. And then next thing you know, things that you didn't think that you were capable of doing, you will be capable of doing,
Absolutely.
and you will feel fantastic in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, I liken it often to, taking baby steps or going for a little walk before you can start doing a light jog, before you do a sprint and then a marathon. So why would you then subject your gut when you've never ever tried, you hate vegetables or you hate fruits, or it's not been so kind to you, you feel, because it's not been introduced to you. We have this habit of, introducing a lot of foods that don't bring health to our lives. And so I think people need to learn to be kind to themselves. They want to suddenly reach a stage where, they're following every single one of your wonderful recipes. My husband, by the way, just loves your blueberry and teff porridge, which I don't know if it's in
Oh,
the book, but I know you made it and he's made it several times since. But,
love that.
people have to take their time, and every person is different. That's what you're trying to say, aren't you? That, you know, you don't have to look at somebody else or your friend or your neighbor and think, oh, they are doing this. It doesn't matter. You are on your own path, and you've got to work that slowly, whether you have ulcerative colitis, whether you've got to work with a specialist, you've got to work with a professional, but at the same time, use your own logic, I think, to understand, because your body does know best in many ways. And so you've got to listen to your body, I think. And I think, books like yours helps people to take a slight step forward, because it can be very bewildering, I think. There are so many wellness gurus, there are so many influencers telling directly opposite, fiber is bad, beans. And, can you tell us a little bit about lectins? Because I know a lot of people ask us, about lectins. And what would you say? I know there have been books about it, and, we don't want to talk specifically about specific people, but beans are life, really. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that beans, legumes are, if you were to ask me what are the healthiest foods that exist, I would probably go with either legumes or whole grains, to be totally honest with you.
yeah,
And the reason why is in both cases, what we see when we study the populations that eat that consume these foods the most
yeah.
is that they live longer with less heart disease, which is our number one killer, with less
In women too.
cancer.
Mm,
Yep, with less cancer, our number two killer, with
mm,
less risk of a stroke. These foods contain fiber, they contain complex polysaccharides, they contain resistant starches, all of which feed the gut microbiome. These are the gut foods.
correct.
And, this idea that lectins are harmful to us is kind of, from a scientific perspective, it's not a very powerful take on things, because actually, if you dig into the science of lectins, what you will discover is actually you'll find more studies that suggest that lectins protect us from cancer
Correct.
than you will find studies that lectins are harmful to us.
Correct.
And so, the evidence that gets brought forward to suggest that lectins are bad for us come in two varieties. And it's actually very, very weak evidence. The evidence that will be brought forward is looking at test tubes. Well, gosh, I mean, if we always believed test tube studies, we would have the quackiest medicine ever
Absolutely.
because they're wrong all the time. They're test tube studies.
Yeah,
I want to know what happens when you need to consume beans. I want to know what happens when these
exactly.
270 people consume whole grains. So, and the second issue is that with the lectins, the other argument that gets made is they'll talk about like some sensational story. And stories are great, but we have
Yeah,
to be willing to or
yeah,
have our mind
stories.
open to seeing where there's sensationalism that's being used. And so like there's a story from a hospital in 1987 where people consumed undercooked food
Yeah,
and they got sick. And it was
surprise.
food poisoning, right? And it was food poisoning. It was a 24-hour thing. Everyone was back to work the next day. No one got hospitalized. No one died. And, you know, you can use stories like that and you can make it sound like, oh, well, this is poison. And it's not. And the problem is that in our society, like the average person in the United States, and I don't think most people in the
Same,
UK are much better.
same.
In the US, the average person eats like 2.5 kilograms, 6 pounds of beans per year.
Yeah,
Now,
hardly
that
any
is the
fiber.
cause of our problems. That's the cause of autoimmune disease. And when we look at the societies that have cultures built on the consumption of legumes, like the Mediterranean, like Costa Rica, uh, we're not seeing an increase in autoimmune diseases. We're not seeing sickly people because most of their diet is whole grains and beans, like rice and beans, basically. What we see are like Costa Rica. This is a country that spends like literally 10% of what the United States does per person
I
on
agree.
healthcare, and they are living longer than we are.
No, I agree. And we have had a few questions about what happens if your nutritionist doesn't allow you to eat beans? What if it happens if you have IBS? What I think the important thing to understand is what we've been highlighting is not to rush into overloading your system. If you're somebody who has never eaten beans, never eaten legumes, you've got to slowly introduce them. You've also got to make use of many of the things that you've talked about in the book, where you make sure that your beans are cooked through properly. They're really soft. You have to make sure that if you know how to sprout, or if you can learn sprouting, and hopefully you'll tell us a little bit more again about sprouting and fermentation. There are lots of different ways you can add spices and herbs, which can help improve digestion. So it's not as if you can never enjoy these things. You may just take longer. If you've not eaten it for 50 years, you can't expect to start eating it, as soon as the next day after your 50th birthday. No, it's not possible.
Right.
You might take a year, you might take 2 years before you can enjoy the food like everybody else. But the gut and our body is very forgiving. They do forgive us for all the things that we do, much more than our friends and family would. So I think it's really important. Do you regularly sprout? And I know you're always showing us on your Instagram, your sprouting techniques and things. Is this something you got into recently after speaking to Doug Evans, or was that something you were always interested? Because I know you talk about it in F goals, which I want to hear as well.
I've always been interested in sprouting. I'll be completely upfront and honest that my wife and I, so we've been eating broccoli sprouts for years, but we've been buying most of them from the store.
Correct.
And like we mentioned, we have a lot of people here. Many of them probably were not here in the beginning, where you and I were basically talking about how, look, we're real people, we're not perfect. And so let me be honest, I struggled with sprouting. I wanted it to work. I could not figure it out. All right.
Really?
I could not figure it out for a while. And what's interesting about it is actually once you do figure it out, and I want to teach as many people as I can so they don't make the mistake that I did or the mistakes. Once you figure it out, it is so
It is.
easy. It is so easy. But I was messing it up. I was like, I would neglect them for a day and then I'd come back and they'd be
You wouldn't rinse it
moldy.
out, and
Yeah, I was making
yes.
mistakes. And so I couldn't get it to work. So anyway, we were buying sprouts. We were doing broccoli sprouts like literally all the time, but we would buy them from the store. And then I became friends with Doug Evans, and he wrote the sprouting book. And eventually I was like, Doug, help me, man, help me, like help me figure this out. And so he intervened. He gave me a consult. We did like a FaceTime session. It was offline, no one saw it, and we did a FaceTime session. And he helped me figure out how to sprout. And ever since then, I've been like
Master sprouter.
obsessed with it. Yeah, I've been obsessed with it. So I'll have like 6 jars going at once,
Yeah.
and it'll be a combination of trying to fulfill the broccoli sprout utilization of my wife, which she is a very high broccoli sprout consumer. So I will typically have like out of 6 jars, typically 3 of them will be broccoli sprouts, which take me typically like 6 days to grow.
Yeah.
And then I'm a huge lentil sprout fan. Lentil sprouts, they're so good.
Amazing.
And they take 3 days, even 2 days. You could do them in 2 days if you want to.
Well, if you lived in India, it would be overnight.
Yeah, well, like you would have a little bit of a tail to start to pop up pretty quick. I mean, like literally probably after 36 hours, there's a tail.
Yeah, yeah.
And and the beauty of sprouting, what's amazing about it is it's a little bit of a gift from nature, because there is a series of chemical reactions that start to occur within the actual seed when you initiate the sprouting mechanism. And so there's this like secret code where by soaking the seed for 12 hours, when you soak the seed for 12 hours, you basically are telling nature, hey, time to go, wake up. And so you initiate this process, and then it starts to like basically create new nutrients. You get B vitamins that weren't there before.
Yeah.
You have an increase in fiber, including an increase in the prebiotic fiber. It's like, it also is wildly inexpensive. You can buy, pounds of organic lentils for, $15 pounds. And those pounds will, like, if you were to take 3 pounds of lentils, you will create from 3 pounds of lentils, you will create, like in my experience, you're probably going to create 15 pounds
easy
of actual food.
Absolutely. No,
So,
I think if there's one thing that people should pick up is, especially if you've got a sensitive gut, for anybody, but if you've got a sensitive gut, one of the things is to learn to sprout properly. And one of the questions is, what's your favorite way to eat broccoli sprouts? What would you say, Will? Do you just eat it on a salad, or, how would
they're very bitter. They're very bitter, and you have to embrace the bitter. You have to welcome it, because the bitter is the cancer-fighting phytochemical, sulforaphane. And so you want that bitterness, but there's nothing wrong with mixing that bitterness in with other flavors so that it starts to disappear. And that could be a smoothie, that could be soup, that could be a salad.
Absolutely.
Those are all great options.
Absolutely. No, I think once you discover the joy of sprouting, you do make a big difference to the kind of foods you start introducing into your life, which brings me very nicely. Fantastic. Rube House says, this is the only live story I've actually stayed on.
Oh, nice.
How nice and how kind. We're having wonderful comments all the way through. But we'll try and save about 10 minutes at the end to try and go through some questions. Yes, sprouting can go wrong sometimes if you don't do it correctly. That's why it's so important to learn the right way how to sprout. I mean, I grew up sprouting things. So, when you have been taught this right from the beginning, it's different. But if you're new to it, don't just start doing things on your own. There's plenty of good guidance, especially through Doug Evans's book. It's worth spending a little bit of money so that you don't end up in hospital and blaming the sprouts. So brings me quite nicely to your F goals in your book, and which is, I think, really very compact way of telling people how to introduce a few key things. No, we don't like superfoods, but can you tell us your F goals? Because for people who don't remember it or haven't read it.
Yeah, my philosophy is that all plants are our friends.
Correct.
And so we want as many friends as possible. I'm a big believer that our diet should be about abundance. So
Yeah.
not about restriction, not about reducing, but actually opening up and trying to get more. And so, but with that being said, it's also within reason. Like,
Yeah.
not every friend is your best friend.
Exactly.
We have certain friends that we're closer to, and we spend more time with them. And so, why not make the most nutritious foods your best friends?
Correct.
And that's what F Goals is about. F Goals is my acronym that allows me to remember what are the foods that I'm trying to get into my life, if not every day, then at least a couple times a week. And so F stands for fruit because
Yum.
fruit has been vilified, but it's so good for us. Whole
It's
fruit.
fabulous.
Fermented, I think that my argument is not that fermentation should be the backbone of our diet. My
No.
argument is that we should include some fermented food as a complement to all the other foods that we eat.
Correct.
Um, so fruit and fermented, G stands for greens. Greens are the
Hey.
most nutritious foods that exist. And also whole grains. We've already
Yeah.
discussed whole grains during this. Fantastic and for the gut microbiome.
Absolutely. And the more
Oh,
whole they are, the better they are. So, if you are thinking brown rice, think one step ahead, think red rice, wild rice, black rice. If you're thinking, quinoa, go for the colored quinoa. Really look at the ancient grains. If you have gluten sensitivity, you'll be amazed at how the ancient grains can actually help you. So, yeah. So F for fruit and fermented, G for greens and grains.
O for omega-3 super seeds. So we're talking
Ooh,
about chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds. These are the omega-3 seeds. They should be
yes.
like literally all three of them you should throw into a smoothie.
Yeah, and always remembering to mill the flax seeds if you're going to put them on your porridge and things, because the seeds otherwise will make you have go to the toilet, but it's not going to give you all the omega. So it needs to be crushed or milled. And we know a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed powder has been shown to work just as well as antihypertensives. So in good trials, so it's worth bringing these things in along with your doctor's guidance, and I think it's really helpful. So yeah, O for omegas. Yes.
Neetu, let me take a quick time out on the
Yeah.
F goals. We will come back to the F goals. I want to take
Yeah.
a quick time out. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the flax seeds.
Yeah.
Let's talk about flax seeds and simultaneously at the same time talk about isoflavones
Yes.
from soy. So I want to hear your
Oh,
opinion about, because let me just kind of set this up and then we'll let you take it from there. Flax seeds contain lignans, which are
yes.
phytoestrogens, and soy containing foods contain isoflavones,
Correct.
which are phytoestrogens. And people have
Correct.
heard different things about estrogens. They've heard that men will get breasts. I haven't seen that happen to me yet. I'm doing okay so far. They will hear that it's bad for breast cancer or for other women's health issues. Talk to us about these phytoestrogens.
Yes. So let me explain what soya is. Soy is a legume. It's a bean. It's known as glycine max. It was discovered about 3,000, maybe even 5,000 years ago in China, and has been the backbone of many of their diets. Now, the reason why soy got a little bit of a bad press was because there was one animal study which suggested that there may be a slight increase in cancer producing cells in the lab. And so that got out very quickly. But what they don't realize is there have been about 20,000 plus studies since then, and all human studies, which have really shown no concern at all. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, so it's a bean or a legume, and I call it the magic bean. The reason it's so magic, I mean, of course, chickpeas and kidney beans and black-eyed beans, they're all fantastic. But the special thing about soy is that it has all the essential amino acids in the same proportion as egg white. So, for all these athletes who want to eat egg white, soy actually has the same sort of proportion of protein and amino acids as egg white. It also has fiber. So it's great for helping people drop a size, lose weight. It's great for the heart. It doesn't have cholesterol. It has, it doesn't have saturated fat. It has MUFAs and PUFAs and things like that. So, and it's also got vitamins. But the unique quality that it has, along with flaxseed, is it has phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. They basically work only on the beta receptor in our tissues. So while estrogen that comes in cow's milk or estrogen in our body, for example, will work on both the receptors, both beta and alpha. And the beauty about soy is that it's fantastic. If a child who's entering puberty, there's going to be more estrogen receptors available, then the soy will promote breast growth, and that doesn't stop it. But if you are somebody who's having excess of estrogen, either because one is carrying more weight or because it's coming in through your diet, the soy estrogens will go and block those receptors. So that's why it protects you from breast cancer. That's why it protects you from prostate cancer. That's why it protects you from all the other cancers. And so just like flaxseed, the lignans in flaxseed have been shown to reduce the risk of breast cancer. Soy is known. There was a very good study with tamoxifen. People who had tamoxifen, they found that they had a significant 28 to 30% reduction in dying from breast cancer. Same thing with prostate cancer, 27% reduction in aggressive prostate cancer. These are big gains for something that is a bean, really. So soya is safe. Whether it's for polycystic ovaries, it reduces the incidence, it reduces the severity of polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. So all women's health, menopause, hot flushes, the bean is very clever. So in your bone, it will help to protect the bone. In your breast, it will stop it from, the other estrogen working and actually causing breast cancer. So it's really, as I said, like Jack and the Beanstalk, magic beans. So soy and all studies. So in China, they have done lots of studies, in Japan, and also looking at men. The reproductive health of men and sperm quality is not changed at all. And forget man boobs. You get man boobs from sadly drinking cow breast milk, because that's what has got the mammalian estrogen that works on our breasts, not the soy phytoestrogen. So plant estrogens are safe at every stage. And, a child who eats even a single portion of soy, which means a cup of soy milk or a handful of edamame beans, they can reduce their risk of breast and prostate cancer as an adult, by about half. So that's so important to know. And so people like you and me should be eating probably 2 to 3 portions. So I have a cup of soy milk on my sprouted lentil porridge. I tend to have a cup of soy milk. I'm terrible nowadays at sprouting. My husband does all the sprouting. I'm very lazy now, so he does all the sprouting. He takes it as a challenge. But I would have soy yogurt. I would have edamame beans, tempeh, tofu. And yes, sometimes you may want to eat the ultra-processed soy meats, which is fine, especially if you're a child or you're going for a party, or if you're an older person and you can't get enough, you have a smaller appetite, it's fine. But generally speaking, we want to stick with the minimally processed soy. So, the edamame beans, the soy, the miso, and natto. I've never eaten it, but apparently it stinks. So yes, so soy is great. And so I suppose your S could in future include soy, or it maybe already does.
Well, I have legumes as my L in my
S.
F goals.
Ah,
And
yes,
so,
yes, of
yeah,
course.
so I have legumes, and so I would include the soy in there. But, I completely agree with every single thing that you said. And the reason why I wanted to lob that your way is because I knew that you would hit that one out of the
I'm
park.
very passionate about it, so I love it.
And someone asked, now obviously we're not giving medical advice here,
No.
but for a person who has endometriosis, so not specifically an individual, but just in general,
Mm.
your patients that have endometriosis, how do you approach issues like soy consumption? Is this okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know from studies that soy, because of the fact that they have plant estrogens, they basically, like any plant-based way of eating, they reduce inflammation. And endometriosis is a condition of inflammation, like type 2 diabetes, like obesity, like cancer. And we know from the Nurses' Health Study, which looked at over 96,000 nurses, that red meat, even eating a couple of servings in a week, can increase your risk of endometriosis by 26%, in some cases by 50%. So red meat chicken also not as strong, but chicken was also associated with increased risk of endometriosis, while soy, on the other hand, had a reduced risk, as did turmeric, as did green tea, as did flaxseed. So we want to try and bring these foods. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to eat 20 portions of soy. Then you're basically missing out on all the other wonderful, colorful vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains. We want you to have between 2 and 4 portions in a day. Even if you have a thyroid problem and you're on thyroid medication, my only advice is try to take it a couple of hours later. Don't mix your thyroid because they can compete for the same receptors. So you want to, maybe have your medication in the evening, so have most of your soy in the daytime. Anyway, you want to try and eat in a circadian rhythm. You want to, I've already had my dinner. By the time I've come, it's 8 o'clock. I try and eat earlier. I'm not very good because when I operate late, I end up eating at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and that's not healthy,
Right.
So, Will, can you tell us what would be your favorite plant-based meal? Is it breakfast, lunch, dinner? And what is it? Is it a naughty burger or what is it?
Oh gosh. Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what, real quick before we go there, there were two quick things I just wanted to say
Yeah,
about soy. I hope you
yeah,
don't mind.
of course.
The first is that my general philosophy when it comes to soy is to eat soy the way they do in East Asia, which means as minimally
Minimally
processed
processed, yes.
as possible. So where I draw the line is like the most processed soy that I will consume is typically organic soy milk or tofu. That's about as far as I will go. But like edamame and tempeh and miso, these are all soy derived. They're all fantastic.
Absolutely.
Um, the second point that I want to make real quick, this is particularly important in the United States, is that I do believe that it's important to buy soy organic.
Okay.
And the reason why is because soy that is not organic in the United States is often genetically modified so that it can be sprayed with Roundup. And I have concerns about the effect of Roundup. In fact, there's a study looking at Roundup and the effect that it has on the gut microbiome, and it's not pretty. And so I want to eliminate Roundup from my diet.
Yeah.
And the only way for me to be able to do this is to actually buy organic on the foods that are being sprayed with Roundup. Now, that being said, the whole genetically modified thing with soy, I want everyone to also be clear that the reason that is being done is actually mostly for animal agriculture. It's not
Yes.
really for
70
humans.
to
But
80%.
yeah,
But
exactly.
the thing in the UK is we actually tell people to avoid organic. There's no need to eat organic in the UK because the fortified soy is not organic because the UK doesn't allow you to add vitamin D or calcium to the soy milk, which is a good way of a good vehicle for vitamin D and calcium to come in for some people, to get their requirements. And so we know that all the soy that comes into the UK by the Sustainable Circle of Soy group, they monitor it. 6% is used for human consumption, and all of it is not genetically modified. So we are in a slightly different situation here in the UK.
Right.
And so, yes, you can buy organic, but right now organic in the UK is not fortified. So, at least as far as I know. And yeah, it doesn't really matter as long as you're getting your edamame and tofu and things. And organic tofu is available here and it's calcium set as well. So that's fantastic. You get both. But yes, I do understand about, because with endometriosis, we are worried about pesticides. We are worried about plastics. There are these things that we are learning a little bit more about. We don't know enough, but if you are in a position of privilege where you can actually make a change and spend a little bit more money in some better products, keeping your food in non-plastic containers, just regular porcelain or stainless steel like we used to in India. There's nothing wrong with that. You can reduce a lot of the environmental pollutants from that as well. So there's so much, the gut is so sensitive to all this, isn't it, Will?
Yeah, it is, and it's a complex conversation that's very nuanced, right?
It
Because
is.
I want people to understand that above all else, I want you to eat plants,
Yeah.
and that I understand that for some people, particularly in the United States, the idea of eating organic and plant-based is not affordable. And so we have to choose our battles in terms of where is the most value.
Exactly.
Um, the good news is that when it comes to soy, at least in the United States, soy products are not very expensive, even when they are organic. I think in part due to subsidies.
Yeah,
So that's one of the good things. But actually, to that end, um, this is where sprouting is so powerful
exactly. Cheap.
because it's very inexpensive, and you can buy the organic seeds, and the organic seeds are not going to be that expensive and
Yeah,
still produce a ton of food. So,
absolutely. No, I think it is working with the sort of budget we have, the food desert that you may be living in. You may be a university student. So I always tell my students to shop towards the end of the day to get the bargains. They should go to the local ethnic shops where they
love
can
that.
get really good produce, avoid the plastic as well. So, there are so many ways of eating well. And for people who are worried about pesticides on fruit and vegetables, can I just warn all of you that actually, as you go higher up in the food chain, which means that every time you eat meat or chicken or a salmon or cod, those bigger animals have eaten a lot more pesticides by the time they come onto your plate. And
Hmm.
so it's really important to understand that by avoiding an apple because it may be sprayed with a pesticide, but choosing salmon on your plate, you're probably hurting yourself much more, both from many angles, Uh,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's important for people to bear in mind. So, I may lay out the reasons why I believe in trying to consume organic when possible.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
Um, and there are aspects to that that are specific to the United States and our agricultural practices that are
Yes,
different
it's
than
very
Europe.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. But I also want people to understand that these studies that you and I have been talking about, Neetu, about the benefits of a plant-based diet, when we talk about the benefits of, like, just to run through the F goals so everyone hears it, the fruit,
Yeah.
the fermented, the greens, the grains, the omega-3s, the aromatics like onions and garlic, the
Oh,
legumes,
love it.
the shrooms, the broccoli sprouts. When we talk about the benefits of each one of these things, these are not studies looking at organic consumption. These are studies where people are just eating whatever's available. And so bear in mind that above all else, eat more plants in
Yes.
variety, in abundance, and your body will thrive as a result of that.
Can I throw in a couple of little nuggets about shrooms? So
Please.
mushrooms, if you eat even the size of your thumbnail, that small a piece of mushroom every day, you can make a significant difference to breast cancer. And that is so, so important to understand that a single button mushroom, the little cheap ones that you get, that's all you need to. Don't eat them raw, but make sure that you get some mushrooms regularly into your diet, because that, along with green tea and flaxseed and soy, can reduce your risk of breast cancer. That's from the diet. Of course, there are other things, lifestyle that we always talk about. The other thing about mushrooms that many people may not know is that they are fungi. They are fungi. And so they absorb the sunlight and the UVB rays of sunlight. And so if you leave them out, just like you would sunbathe with some sunscreen on later, is you get vitamin D enough actually for your whole day supply, but it's not a very reliable source. But hey, if you're buying mushrooms, stick them in the sun for a few hours between 12 and 3, and you've got vitamin D powered shrooms. What can be better? So,
This is so funny too, because you and I, we could probably just like throw a food into the mix and see where it goes. And the other thing that I would add with mushrooms is, so you mentioned the vitamin D, which I loved. You mentioned the breast cancer protection properties, which I love. And then the third thing is that I sometimes have to check myself because I often will say that the only source of fiber is plants.
no,
And that's
exactly.
and it's not actually true because of fungi, because of mushrooms.
Yes.
And they will have beta glucan,
Yeah.
and beta glucan is a form of fiber. It's a complex polysaccharide
Like porridge, like in porridge.
that you
Yeah.
will find in oats, and that actually has properties in terms of optimizing our immune system.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many wonderful foods. That's why my heart aches sometimes to call anything superfood. For you, it's your broccoli sprout. For me, it's soy. But actually, literally every little fruit and vegetable has really fought long and hard, to deserve to be called a superfood, you know?
Well, and this is why I believe in a diet. This is why I believe that recentering our focus, it's not so much like what are the superfoods, and neither should it be, hey, what should I take out of my diet? Instead, I really truly believe that it's let's bring them all in because
Ab-
at the end of the day, every single one of these plants has its own unique properties that are
Absolutely.
beneficial to human health. And when you bring
Absolutely.
them all in, you get the benefits from all of them.
Absolutely. Now, Will, we are almost, you won't believe this. This is almost close to an hour. So, but
I'm having too
there
much
are,
fun. Time flies.
I know when you're having fun, but I do want to know, uh, we talk about the 6 lifestyle pillars, having friends, exercising, sleep, stress, avoiding alcohol and smoking, eating plants. How do you manage, do you try and do all 6 lifestyle pillars consciously? Is there one that you struggle with? I know I struggle with sleep. Um, and which one would you say is, how do you stay positive? I just want to know, you know, a little bit, because you're always smiling. You look so happy always.
Um, all right. I think my biggest struggle is my biggest struggle, just to be upfront and honest, is that I probably work too hard. And
Yeah,
I've always been that way. I've been doing this. I've been
yeah,
working in this way since I was, 18 when I started college as a pre-med. I've always been, I kind of like it when people call me an overachiever. Because I
yeah,
mean, basically, you're either an overachiever or you're an underachiever.
yeah,
So I guess I would rather be an overachiever.
yeah,
And so I work a little bit too hard. I get myself into a lot of stuff. And I think that that to me is probably my biggest thing. And so what I've had to do is I've had to create time where it's like, look, no, 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 hold up. You are not going to be checking Instagram during that time. You are not going to be working on the next project during that time. That is your time, and
yeah,
you are going to do something with it for yourself.
yeah.
And so that to me has probably been the biggest thing. How about for you, Neetu?
I think for me, there were a couple of things. I've been a very busy obstetrician and gynecologist for 35 years. I was an immigrant. I came to England. I had to prove myself and be twice as good, work twice as hard to reach where I have. I've been very lucky, very supportive husband, wonderful children. Uh, but when I was 38, I became menopausal and I didn't know where to turn. And so a combination of really long night shifts, operating till late, as well as becoming menopausal, I think all have affected my sleep, to an extent. So I often used to always think sleep was for the weak. Sleep was for, people who had nothing to do. And I always have so much going on in my life that I feel I don't want to sleep more than 4 or 5 hours. And maybe I can manage with such little sleep. But as I'm getting older, I'm going to be 60 next year. And so I feel I need to start prioritizing. I do feel that's my weakest pillar. I have so much to do, so much I want to achieve always in a day. And so I think sleep is really not given enough importance. And I think I wish I'm trying my best. That's my weakest pillar. I will be very honest.
I think being a doctor is it is not just a job, it's a life.
Yeah,
It becomes a part of who you are. There's no getting away from it, and it's very demanding. And so, as a gynecologist, when there's something going on with one of your patients,
yeah,
you're with your patient, and there just is
yeah,
no other way around that.
yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
but I'm with you. I love sleep. I could I wish we could reinstitute the nap time that I used to have when I was in kindergarten. That was my favorite.
Oh, it's supposed to be
And
very good.
oh, I love it. I love naps. I love sleep. Um, I what I will do many days, to be honest with you, my best work I do at 5 in the morning
Yeah,
because there's no distractions and I'm very focused. And so what I will do many days is I will go to bed like at 9 or 10 o'clock pretty early and get my at least 7 hours, ideally eight,
fabulous.
and then get up at 5 and do a little
Super.
bit of work.
Super. Now, we haven't had a chance to even talk about your plant-fed project. There's so much that I wanted to talk to you, but I know that, an hour is sort of the time we should, and maybe set up another chat, where we can talk about, there's literally so many more questions I have for you, which I know all our listeners would love. So I think we should try and maybe, do this again pretty
Let's do
soon. I
it.
know you've got a busy schedule, but we should find some time. I think people have really found it interesting. Nobody's moved from what I can see. And but is your project quite easy to get on? If people have, do they get quite a lot of one-to-one from a dietitian and things? Just can you tell us a little bit about your project? The
Yeah.
plantfedgut.com
Yeah,
is
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
website, right?
Right. Well, so, basically the story briefly is that I work full time as a physician, and like I'm literally on call right now. I'm about to head to the hospital in a few minutes here, and um I wanted to try to reach out and connect with as many people as possible.
Yeah,
And I knew that when the book came out, I really believed in the book before it came out. I really believed that this would connect with people. And so I felt like I needed a way to allow people to take the next step in the journey.
yeah,
But I also knew that it was unreasonable to expect people to fight a Charleston. And the reality is I'm simply incapable of doing that. I need a doppelganger. I don't have enough of me. I can only do so much. And I like to spend time with my patients. I spend 30 minutes with every single one of my patients. So there's just not enough hours in the day. And so I created this course to give
wow,
people, basically to deliver value, where I can give people more of me over the course of 7 weeks than they would get if they were to pay for a flight to come to Charleston and spend 30 minutes
correct,
with me.
correct.
And so the course is a 7 week, in-depth course discussing everything that I want you to know about how to optimize your gut. And so it includes video sessions, audio lessons, interviews with other people. It includes a workbook, live question and answer sessions, old question and answer sessions that you can access and see how I handled certain things, recipes. I'm probably forgetting something else that's in there, but basically, there's a group. Like basically, one of the best parts about it is that you end up in a group
Yeah,
with other people who are just like you, and everyone's trying to help one another. And which is like a beautiful thing. I feel like a proud dad when I see, people like helping one another. So anyway,
and
I
what is it?
created the,
How do they get onto it? What do they type in?
well, right now it's a wait list. Right now it's a wait
Oh,
list, and the course is at this point going to be offered probably in late June. So for people who are interested, you come to my website, theplantfedgut.com. Let me mention real quick that I have an email newsletter where I discuss like hot news studies that come out. I discussed a study literally yesterday with people in my email newsletter. I have a free 5-day challenge, completely free for fun. And then there's the wait list for the course, which you can find at my website. And if you're interested, you put your name on the wait list, and you will be the first to know when the course opens back up.
ah,
And then you can grab your seat.
the plantfedgut.com. Fantastic.
Theplantfedgut.com is my website. That's correct.
Yes. Rohini, my daughter's just put that on. Yes. I have a lovely website too. It doesn't do a course, but there are about 50 fact sheets, lots of recipes and things. And anybody who was interested in the soy conversation, there's a whole fact sheet talking about every single question that you may have about soy. So, I think it's great to get this information out to people. If we can help even one person, I think it's worth any effort. Don't you think so, Will?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's really what
Absolutely.
it's all about for me. My thing for me is this. I would not be able to. I went into medicine to try to help people.
Yeah,
And I feel very blessed and fortunate that through this new technology that exists,
I know.
like social media, and the internet, I feel very blessed and fortunate that I can apply those, basically everything that I've learned and apply those skills and education into trying to help as many people as possible. So for me, it's always been like I'm interested in solutions.
Yeah,
And that's what it's about is creating solutions for people who need them. And I know that's exactly what you're doing with your
absolutely.
account too, Dr. Neetu.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that, you can use social media to your detriment, or you can use it to your, enjoyment as well as for your benefit. And that's what we're doing. And yes, this IG Live will be saved. I hope I don't click, delete, because people are going to love to watch this back again. So I will let you go to the hospital, Will. And I think we need to make, another date, hopefully not too distant future. So
We will
thank
do
you.
this again. We will do
Yes.
this again. It was a total privilege. I'm grateful to have met you through this social media, and also I look forward to one day connecting with you in
Oh,
person.
yes,
And
I'll be visiting
to
and you will be
the
visiting.
oh, I want to come to the UK. I've literally never been. I've
Well,
never been to London.
you are going to come and stay with me. So stay with us. And you will get lots and lots of delicious food. All of
Lots of
us are such
sprouts.
foodies. We are real foodies. And so you're going to be spoiled. So yes, don't book a hotel. When you come with your family, come and stay with us.
I love it. And to the people, because I'm sure there are some people who are here right now who are my followers, I want you all to follow Dr. Neetu. Make sure you follow Dr.
Uh,
Neetu after we're done, and you can find her name up at the top and just click that button, click the follow. She's wonderful.
Thank you. And same to you. Take care.
Thanks,
Have a lovely
everyone.
weekend, everybody, and be safe. Wear your mask, wash your hands, don't stress. Love everybody. Bye bye.